Howdy everybody, this is Grant with Moving Store, and today I'm going to give you a basic, big picture overview of managing your time clocks for ELDs, the brake rules, pre-trip inspections, and then just some planning tips and tricks to make sure that you're managing all of this as best as possible. So start off, we've got 3 different duty statuses. You have off duty, on duty, and driving. Off duty is any time that you're not being paid, so all the time that you're at your house, sleeping, lunch breaks, all of that is all off duty time. Any time that you're not getting paid, you are in off duty. On duty is when you're on the clock, so you are loading a truck, unloading a truck, doing a pre-trip inspection, waiting on your coworkers to arrive in the morning, stuff like that. All on duty status. And then driving status, it's in the name, it's when you're driving the truck. So now that we understand these 3 duty statuses, let's jump over to these clocks here. So we have 4 different clocks you need to maintain. You have the 8-hour driving clock, the 11-hour driving clock, the 14-hour shift clock, and then the 70-hour over 8-day shift clock. And so the simplest one out of this is the 8-hour driving clock. This rule states that you have to have a 30-minute uninterrupted off-duty status break within an 8-hour span of driving. So if you are driving for 8 hours continuously, at some point during that 8 hours, you have to have a 30-minute break. The 11-hour driving clock states that, and the 11-hour and the 14-hour shift clocks, these tie in together, but so the 11-hour driving clock states that during the 14-hour shift clock, only 11 hours of that can be driving. And then the 14-hour shift clock states that you can only have a 14-hour shift during a day. And so the 14-hour shift is the combination of all on-duty and driving statuses. And then obviously the 11-hour driving clock is only the driving time you've done for that day. So and these tie in together. So if you are loading a truck for 6 hours, it's going to decrease your driving clock by 3 hours because you've used up your 3 hours of on-duty time that's left in this 14-hour shift, and it starts decreasing the amount of time that you're driving. So before you leave the customer's house after you're loading, you need to check this to see how much time do I have left. Am I going to have to take a 30-minute break if I have 8 hours of driving left? And then that way you can kind of plan out where you're going to stop for the day and when you're going to be getting to the customer's new house. So that's those 3. And then the 70-hour over 8 days states that you can only have 70 hours of shift time in an 8-hour or an 8-day span. So hopefully you never reach that mark. We really don't want you working 70 hours during a week. And again, we don't want you working a bunch of 14-hour shifts in a row, but that is part of the job. It does happen, and it just kind of is what it is. So you need to be making sure that you're monitoring all 4 of these to make sure you're staying compliant. And so kind of touched on these brake rules, explaining these clocks, but again, the 30-minute break rule, you have to have a 30-minute break within 8 hours of driving. The 10-hour rule, if you reach this 11-hour mark or this 14-hour shift mark, you have to take a 10-hour break before you can log back in. And so it can be kind of tricky. You want to make sure that if you're at a hotel, that you don't drive for 10 hours or log back on duty at all during that 10-hour span, or it'll reset this 10-hour mark. And so we definitely don't want you to do that and have to be waiting around for more than you need to. And then the 34-hour reset, if you reach this 70-hour in an 8-day limit, you have to take a 34-hour downtime before you can log back in again. So, want to make sure you definitely don't hit that, but it might happen. So that's kind of a brief overview of this. Now we're going to jump over to pre-trip inspections. So to start off, in-cab documents, you want to make sure that you have your insurance cards and their current registration and a license plate that matches. Sometimes license plates do fall off, so definitely check that. Your DOT inspection sheet and sticker. So on the door of your truck, we'll make a door here. Look at that beautiful door. So on this door, somewhere on here will be a small sticker that says something along the lines of like FMCSA inspection sticker with a date punched out of it. And so you want to make sure that the date that is on the sticker is current. So if the truck was inspected, excuse me, if the truck was inspected in January of 2023, it's good for 1 year. So that means it expires in January of 2024. And so you want to look at that sticker and make sure that it is current. And then you have the accompanying paperwork that goes with it. And so that'll have the same date, and it'll have a bunch of stuff checked off that says that the mechanic that inspected this truck personally certifies that it is roadworthy and passes a DOT inspection. So if you don't have that paperwork, get with your manager about it. We keep digital copies of them on hand, and then that way, if you get pulled over by DOT and he asks you for your DOT inspection sheet, you actually have it, or you can get it easily. Two other things you want to have is a blank paper logbook. That's a DOT regulation that you have to have a blank paper logbook with you at all times, and that is for a situation to where your Samsara ELD stops working. You have a backup paper log that you can still keep track of your time with. And so in that instance, this is kind of getting into the weeds a little bit, but if your Samsara stops working, you have to take that paper logbook, fill out the previous days, so for the previous 7 days of driving in that logbook, and then start maintaining from that point on all of your driving statuses. And these rules are the same for electronic and paper logs. And then the last thing you want to make sure you have is a cab accident reporting kit. And that'll have instructions for if you get in a car accident, the things you need to do in order, and a piece of paper in there that you need to fill out that our insurance requires us you send off. So make sure you've got all that stuff in there, and you should be good to go during a DOT inspection on the paperwork side. Now, I want to touch on a few things that you definitely want to look for during a pre-trip inspection, and I want to emphasize that you need to be doing this every time, especially before you go out of state. But before you leave every day, give your truck a once over and make sure that there's nothing broken on it, and that nothing looks, bad. So some things to check: tires, making sure that there's not a big gash or a nail in them, making sure that they're inflated and that they're not bald, and all of those things are DOT violations that if you get pulled over and the officer checks that and there's a nail in your tire, you're going to get a ticket for it or put out of service. And on top of that aspect of it, all of these things that we're asking you to check for in here are safety things. So, safety is our number one priority. And the last thing we want is for a steer tire to blow out while you're going 70 miles down the interstate, you veer off and kill somebody. None of us want that. So make sure that you're checking stuff like that. And some other things to check for is your running lights, making sure that your windshield isn't cracked or chipped, that you've got mud flaps, that your headlights work, that your mirrors work. All of that stuff is very important to check before you leave. And I also want to emphasize that, and this kind of ties into this planning aspect here of thinking ahead of what you're doing, but taking 15 minutes in the morning before you leave could save you a day that you're stuck out on the road. So if you skip this 15 minutes of checking in the morning and you go and have a blowout on the road, it could take us 8 hours to get a tire guy out there, and you're going to be stuck in the middle of Oklahoma with nowhere to go and nothing to do while we get somebody out there. And I mean, and that's a real thing. So, making sure that you take that 15 minutes in the morning, and if you find something that's wrong, we'll get you in another truck. It's going to save you a ton of time. It's going to save you a ton of frustration and a lot less stress on the road, making sure that you know that your truck is in good shape and it's not going to cause you any issues. So last thing is planning, and this ties in with clock management and thinking about what you're doing and planning what you're going to do. So when you get assigned to a line haul, you need to be looking at the route you're going to take, how long it's going to take you to get there, multiplying the travel time to account for you're driving a truck and not a car, so it's going to take you longer to get there naturally, traffic that might happen, stuff like that. And then planning out based on your clocks up here when you're going to be stopping for the day, where you're going to stop, and how long it's going to take you to get there. So one thing that is helpful to making sure that you are accounting for unplanned things is for your 11-hour driving clock. If you're just driving for the day and you're not loading or anything like that, reduce this clock by 1 hour. And that way, when you reach that 10-hour mark, you're like, okay, there's a hotel 20 minutes up the road. I'm going to stop there for the night. And you don't risk running this out, going into violation, and you've given yourself time to figure out where you're going to stop for the day. Just kind of stuff like that. Thinking about how long it's going to take you to load the truck and how that's going to affect your 14-hour shift. Planning and looking at all of the different aspects of the job is going to help you manage these rules and this clock really well, and it's going to be less stressful, and that way you know when you're getting home and you're not rushing to do stuff. And one thing I do want to say is that rushing to get a job done faster is something that we don't want to be doing. So let's say that you are an hour away from home. That does not give you permission to, and you're at the maximum amount of driving you can do for the day. You cannot and do not just continue driving to get home. I understand that everybody wants to get home as fast as possible, and we want to sleep in our own beds, but this is part of the job, and you can't break these rules because you want to get home faster. It just is what it is. So, these rules take priority over the load. If you run out of one of these clocks here, and you have to delay the drop off the next day, you're going to have to delay the job for the next day. It just is what it is. These clocks take priority over our timeline for getting stuff done or getting the truck unloaded. And like I said, if you're planning out your loads and planning out your drives, you're not going to run into those type of issues. So on that note, if you have any questions, please talk to your managers. They should be able to answer them for you. And if they can't, they'll forward the question on to me and I'll get you an answer back. Anyway, y'all drive safe. Thank y'all so much for all your hard work. And have a good one. Thank you.